All right, so here we are with the 56 Nomad. Some of you Tri-5 guys might not want to watch this because I'm about ready to cut the front of this frame off. Just so you guys know, this has already had a clip put on it out of some GM, maybe like Camaro or Nova or something or other. But it already has been grafted in here. And so you guys that are the purists, you know, it's already been monkeyed with. Plus, it's not my car, it's a customer's, and whatever the customer wants, the customer gets. So we are gassering this 56 Nomad. Would it look cool if it was, you know, lowered pro touring style? Sure. I appreciate that look. You know, but like I said, the customer gets what he wants. So he wants to gasser this, and that's what we're going to do. The rear end is in there, and it is clamped down with the U-bolts. And once I get the drivetrain in here, I will set the pinion angle, tack the perches, and weld those up like I said. So I've got this sitting with the frame. The center section of the frame is the flattest portion of this frame, and I have it sitting dead flat. And then I also ran a level across the tops of the frame rails here to make sure it was level from side to side. So I know that it's level front to back, and I know it's level side to side. So now I've made some marks here with a paint pen. I came up from this firewall mount about 6 inches, and I'm going to cut here on both sides with my plas cutter and drop the front of this frame off. I also welded in a cross support right back here. You know, from my cut, probably 13 inches back, I've got a cross support that I welded in there just to make sure that when I cut the front of the frame doesn't decide to relax and move in or out. So I know that that'll hold the frame in position, as well as the front body mounts here will kind of help keep things in perspective until I get the new front frame section installed and welded up. So I'm going to go ahead and put you guys on a time lapse. I'm going to fire up the plas cutter and I'm going to get cutting. Guaranteed it's probably going to smoke out my shop because most of these frames are packed full of old grease and debris, and whoever grafted this other frame on here put Bondo over their work. So yeah, we'll see what happens here, but watch and I'll get this cut off. Voila, I cut the front of the frame off. Gonna have a little bit of challenges over here because they modified this pretty far back into here. So I'll have to play around with this, mocking up the new front subframe. So a little bit of a challenge, but not too crazy. This side isn't that bad. I don't think they got carried away into most of the frame here. Actually, they got back farther here. But yeah, I mean, we'll get in here and get this trued up as best as we can on both sides, sand it all clean, because once we insert the new front frame and get it tacked, I have to add a bunch of gusset plates that tie the frame rails into the new front frame section. So I think at this point I'm gonna wheel this front clip out, get the front tires off of it. I'll address these frame rails and get them sanded down. There is some Bondo in here, so it'll make a little bit of dust, but my shop's already smoky from torching in here. So anyways, I'll do another little bit of time lapse. You guys can watch me clean up the ends of the frame rail, and then we'll go from there. All right, as you guys can see, I've got the new front frame section put into place, and it's tack welded on the inside here, and then on top I've got it squared up with the rear axle, probably within an eighth or less of being squared up with the rear axle. I also did a X measurement on some of the factory frame holes. I did an X measurement on either side to make sure that this was square in relation to the rest of the chassis. There's also some factory nipples on the underside of the frame, locating pins, that I also pulled measurements off of forward and also X'd off of that to make sure that this was square with the frame. I also put a level on the chassis back here behind this steering column shaft across to the other side, and made sure that when this was sitting on the jack stands that the chassis was level. And then I came forward to here and to here to make sure this new front frame was level inside the chassis here, and that it's not twisted one way or other. And I used a digital angle finder on top of my level. So I set the level on here, put the digital angle finder on top, made sure that it was 0. Same thing back here, made sure it was 0. So it's all tacked in the position that I want and squared up and where I want. The biggest challenge that I ran into with this is that they had already grafted a front clip off of some GM, Nova, something like that. And when they did it, they tied in way back here by the body mount on this firewall. Normally when you do one of the gasser kits, you don't cut that far back to do it. You usually pull a tape measure forward about 6 inches, maybe 8 inches, and cut it, and then insert your frame into it at that point. So I had a little bit of a challenge back here getting the insides of these frame pieces cut and peeled open, because they were bent outwards like this. So I had to cut them and straighten them out basically. And now I'm going to do the outside where I've already cut the tops of them with my Plaz, cut a triangle out of them, and now I'm going to do the same to the bottom, and I'll be able to fold the outside metal in to the new frame here and get it tacked. So that's my next step, is to get this cut out on top and bottom enough to where I can fold this metal in, get it tacked, and I can start welding some of this stuff up on here. I also have in the gasser kit, there's an assortment of boxing plates for each side, total of 8 pieces. So there's a top, a bottom, and 2 sides for each side of the frame. And what that does is it'll take your splice here and it will box the whole original frame to the new frame in, so that it'll give it tons of structural integrity, and that there will be no question that this front end will ever move. So going forward, I'm going to go ahead and get busy with the Plaz on the bottom of these frame pieces, get this bent in and get it tacked. So I'll do some time lapse, you guys can follow, and we'll go to the next position here. Okay, so you can see here I've folded these in, welded them down here. I'll come back, weld this in there. Not really worried about the big gap up here because I have boxing plates that'll fill that in. And then same thing over here. That folded in, welded through here. I'll weld this in, and then this will all be filled in with boxing plates. I rechecked my measurements forward and double checked it with the cross pattern, so it's still spot on. And I'm going to go ahead and finish welding those areas across the top here. I'm not so worried about the bottom because there's some pretty big openings, but that'll all be, you know, I can weld up to a certain point, and then the boxing plates will obviously fill that in. So that'll all be tied in, you know, back farther here. I'll have to do some grinding on the bottom sides as well. But that's progress. So I'm going to continue on, and I'll show you guys once I get the boxing plates tacked into position and what the next step is at from there. All right, it's been a couple days. I had a bunch of stuff going on. New job in the shop, 55 Bel Air, getting a 9-inch rear end and Caltrax, and I'm doing a 700R4 automatic swap in it. I have got the boxing plates on 3 sides, both sides. I still have to do the bottom boxing plate that goes underneath, but you can kind of see how it ties the old frame to the new front frame, top, bottom, and sides. And I made sure to go way back on these boxing plates to tie into the old frame, since this already had a front clip put on it years ago. And so I think the next step is I'm going to come in here and weld all this out here around the front, around here, and then I've got a bunch of work to do on the underside here. Not only do I need to take off the old spring hanger mounts on both sides, because at one time I think this was already gassered. Probably not the right way though. But anyways, I got to come in here and do some grinding and cleaning up before I put the bottom boxing plates on. And then I can weld on the underside plates. And then at that point, I'll be able to hang the leaf spring in here. And I have a measurement from this spring eye bolt back to where the actual shackle mount goes. And I can weld that to the frame, bolt on the leaf springs, and then I can set the front axle in here, get the caster set right on it, tack the perches onto the housing or onto the drop axle. So my goal is to get this welded up, get the underside ground clean, and get the bottom boxing plates on. And then I will probably do another video of me putting the leaf springs on with the axle, setting it up for caster, tacking the perches and all that. I also need to get the booster off the firewall, clean up some of the spots on the firewall, weld in some extra holes, and repaint this, mask it off, and repaint this just a clean black again, or a blitz black. So that'll be on the next agenda to do as well after I get the front end kind of set up. I'm making progress on the 56 gasser build, and hopefully by the end of next week I should have the front suspension under this car, and hopefully get everything tacked where it needs to be on the suspension, and hopefully get ready to start like finish welding out everything on the axle and painting stuff, welding up the firewall, all that I'm hoping to have done by the end of next week. We'll see. I also need to tear into this 55 over here, hopefully get the rear end out of it next week sometime, and start putting together the quick performance 9-inch housing and Caltrax setup that I got for that. And then once the rear end's done, I'm going to put the transmission in, the 700R4, and then at that point I can get that wired up and get that job done and gone. Hopefully by middle April is my goal, or end April. I'm just trying to bounce between both of these jobs this next month of April. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I'll post more as I can, and we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks.